Hey there, and welcome back to Kinfolk Chat. This is Swarthy Daisy, aka Erica, and in today's video, I want to take a look at who the Native American people are. The indigenous peoples of the Americas are the inhabitants of the Americas before the arrival of the European settlers in the 15th century, and the ethnic groups who now identify themselves with those peoples. Many parts of the Americas are still populated by indigenous peoples. Some countries have sizable populations, especially Bolivia, Canada, Chile, Ecuador, Guatemala, Mexico, Peru, and the United States. Application of the term Indian originated with Christopher Columbus, who, in his search for India, thought that he had arrived in the East Indies. Eventually, those islands came to be known as the West Indies, a name still used. This led to the blanket term Indies and Indians for the indigenous inhabitants, which implied some kind of ethnic or cultural unity among the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Even though the term Indian generally does not include the culturally and linguistically distinct indigenous peoples of the Arctic regions of the Americas, such as the Aleuts, Inuit, or Yupik peoples, who entered the continent as a second, more recent wave of migration several thousand years later, and have much more recent genetic and cultural commonalities with the aboriginal peoples of the Asiatic, Arctic, Russian, Far East. These groups are nonetheless considered indigenous peoples of the Americas. The specifics of Paleo-Indian migration to and throughout the Americas, including the exact dates and routes traveled, are the subject of ongoing research and discussion. According to archaeological and genetic evidence, North and South America were the last continents in the world to gain human habitation. During the Wisconsin glaciation, 50 to 17,000 years ago, falling sea levels allowed people to move across the land bridge of Beringia that joined Siberia to northwest North America, Alaska. Alaska was a glacial refugium because it had low snowfall, allowing a small population to exist. The Laurentide ice sheet covered most of North America, blocking nomadic inhabitants and confining them to Alaska for thousands of years. Commonly known Native American peoples, bands, and groups include Cherokee, Seminole, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, Iroquois, Sioux, Apache, and Navajo. The various nations, tribes, and bands of indigenous peoples of the Americas have differing preferences in terminology for themselves. While there are regional and generational variations in which umbrella terms are preferred for indigenous peoples as a whole, in general, most indigenous peoples prefer to be identified by the name of their specific nation, tribe, or band. The Cherokee are one of the indigenous peoples of the Southeastern Woodlands of the United States. Prior to the 18th century, they were concentrated in their homelands, in towns along river valleys of what is now southwestern North Carolina, southeastern Tennessee, edges of western South Carolina, northern Georgia, and northeastern Alabama. The Seminole are a Native American people who developed in Florida in the 18th century. Today, they live in Oklahoma and Florida and comprise three federally recognized tribes: the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma, the Seminole Tribe of Florida, and Miccosukee Tribe of Indians of Florida, as well as independent groups. The Seminole people emerged in a process of ethnogenesis from various Native American groups who settled in Spanish Florida beginning in the early 1700s, most significantly northern Muskogee Creeks from what is now Georgia and Alabama. The Chickasaw are an indigenous people of the Southeastern Woodlands. Their traditional territory was in the southeastern United States of Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. Their language is classified as a member of the Muskogean language family. In the present day, they are organized as the federally recognized Chickasaw Nation. The Choctaw are a Native American people originally based in the Southeastern Woodlands in what is now Alabama and Mississippi. Their Choctaw language is a Western Muskogean language. Today, Choctaw people are enrolled in 3 federally recognized tribes: the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, Miccosukee Band of Choctaw Indians, and Jena Band of Choctaw Indians in Louisiana. Creek Indians were also known as Muskogee Creek. The Creek Indians are one of the 5 civilized tribes: Creek, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole. Cultural area is the Southeast United States. Their linguistic group is Muskogean. The federal status is recognized. Their clans are Wind, Bird, Alligator, and Bear. Their original homeland along the banks of the Alabama, Coosa, Tallapoosa, Flint, Ocmulgee, and Chattahoochee rivers in the Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee areas. Creek Indians trace their ancestry through the female line. The children belong to the same clan as their mother. Clan members were closely related so that they had to marry someone from different clans than his or her own. The Creek Nation is comprised of 6 political districts: Coweta, Deep Fork, Eufaula, Muskogee, Ocmulgee, Wewoka, and these districts function like counties. The Iroquois originally lived near Lake Ontario and along the Mohawk River in New York State. Around 1600, 5 tribes, the Mohawks, the Oneidas, the Onondagas, the Cayugas, and the Senecas, banded together to form a confederacy. The Sioux, or Oceti-Sakowin, are groups of Native American tribes and First Nation peoples in North America. The modern Sioux consists of 2 major divisions based on language divisions: the Dakota and Lakota. Collectively, they are known as the Oceti-Sakowin, 7 Council Fires. The term Sioux is an exonym created from a French transcription of the Ojibwe term, Nadue-Sioux, and can refer to any ethnic group within the Great Sioux Nation or to any of the nation's many language dialects. Before Spanish colonization, Apache domain extended over what are now, in the United States, east central and southeastern Arizona, southeastern Colorado, southwestern and eastern New Mexico, and western Texas, and in Mexico, northern Chihuahua and Sonora states. However, the ancestral Apache probably did not reach the Southwest until at least 1100 CE. They apparently migrated to the area from the far north, for the Apachean languages are clearly a subgroup of the Athabascan language family, with the exception of the Navajo and other Athabascan-speaking tribes were originally located in what is now Western Canada. The Navajo Nation is the largest federally recognized tribe in the United States, the Cherokee Nation being the second largest. The Navajo Nation has the largest reservation in the country. The reservation straddles the Four Corners region and covers more than 27,000 square miles of land in Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico. The Navajo language is spoken throughout the region, and most Navajos also speak English. Historically, certain Native American tribes have had close relations with African Americans, especially in regions where slavery was prevalent or where free people of color have historically resided. Members of the 5 civilized tribes participated in holding enslaved African Americans in the Southeast, and some enslaved or formerly enslaved people migrated with them to the West on the Trail of Tears in 1830, and later during the period of Indian removal. While almost all African Americans are racially mixed, and many have family stories of Native heritage, usually these stories turn out to be inaccurate, with only 5% of African American people showing more than 2% Native American ancestry. H.L. Gates summarized these statistics to mean that if you have 2% Native American ancestry, you had one such ancestor on your family tree 5 to 9 generations back, which is 150 to 270 years ago. Their findings also concluded that the most common non-black mix among African Americans is English and Scots-Irish. The article goes on to note that geneticist Kim Tallbear, she stated that the Indigenous Peoples Council on Biocolonialism agree that DNA testing is not how tribal identity is determined. She stressed that people think there's a DNA test to prove that you're Native American, and there isn't. She said Native American markers are not found solely among Native Americans. While they occur more frequently among Native Americans, they are also found in people in other parts of the world. The article also notes that only 5% of all black Americans have at least 12.5% Native American ancestry, the equivalent of at least one great-grandparent. Fact, fully 58% of African American people, according to geneticist Mark Shriver at Morehouse College, possess at least 12.5% European ancestry. Again, the equivalent of that one great-grandparent. So there we have it. There are people that are African American that have Native American ancestry. Some have a lot and some have a little. In future videos, we're going to look into the percentages of Native American ancestry, as well as other ethnic groups that are considered Native that we kind of touched on in this video as well. Let us know your thoughts by leaving a comment below. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to share this video, and make sure to like this video. Thanks again so much for watching. Take care.